What's going on, future me? Hope all is well. Just want to update you and put together a plan for the coming week. There's a lot that happened last week, especially with NFP, Feds raising rates not only in the U.S. but in Great Britain as well, in the UK. So definitely, a lot of things to look at, a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to consider going into this coming week. And at the moment, I have the weekly pulled up for the dollar. There was a lot of volatility in the dollar last week, let me tell you. Especially with, not just NFP, but the Fed raising rates, more than anything. Everyone was anticipating either a pivot for a 50 basis point rate hike or, to stay consistent and stand firm in their original sort of stance with a 75 basis point hike. We did see that 75-point rate hike as well. Initially, because I was looking at the market as they were announcing rates and during FOMC and all these different events. Initially, the dollar did pretty much dump. It dropped down, and it ended up spiking way back up when Jerome Powell mentioned that the interest rates that they initially stated might actually end up being a bit higher once they're done with their hikes and everything else. So that got a bad reaction from risk markets. And then towards the end of the week, obviously NFP on Friday, the dollar just dumped. Like, as you guys can see, this loan went to the upside. It looks like there might be, a small reversal playing out. It looks like structure might be starting to break on the dollar. Of course, we won't see that confirmed until this weekly channel breaks and we break back below this sort of range low in confluence with this 382 here. We could also look at the monthly. You can definitely make a case for like a potential evening star being formed with this next monthly candle. If we get like a obviously a bearish engulfing, that would confirm that evening star formation back into potentially even 103 where we broke out of. So definitely something to take into consideration. This could just be the dollar finding another floor before moving higher. As I said in my last pre-market plan, if we could look at the daily as well. It's hard to really say that, right, when you have this huge engulfing candle to the downside. Like, there's no, no even, real wick on this particular candle. Closed with a lot of strength to the downside, obviously, with this channel break here as well on the daily. But we still have not broken down below 110. This general area. And that's something that I urge my future self to look into and to take into consideration last week and the last couple weeks, especially because with this kind of dollar strength, it's not something that I would necessarily want to fade, especially with all of the rate hikes we know are coming in the near future. And of course, with the sentiment that the Fed has saying that even the interest rates at the moment might end up being higher, especially with all these different heights, and they'll do whatever it takes to get a handle on inflation, all these different things. It's hard to really fade the dollar and not expect it to just find a floor somewhere else. So we could just be moving within this new sort of range now. But of course, I will definitely be looking for breaks of these sort of structures to see if the reversal that I'm seeing on the weekly and the monthly could potentially play out. But until then, I'm still, of course, bullish the dollar. I'm not going to fade this kind of strength because in many cases, we just have small knockbacks before a push higher, as we've seen week after week, month after month. So that's really all I have to say as far as the dollar is concerned. Going to continue to watch the sort of 110 area. If we come in, test it, maybe get as far as like 109 area. Still, just going to be looking at it from the perspective of the dollar trying to find a floor before pushing higher. Even if we get as low as like 108, unless we break 108 to the downside into the 105 sort of region, then I would, unless we do that, then I wouldn't consider it necessarily a reversal. But if we do break 108 and we move into 105, I would then be, considering, maybe it's time to kind of start fading the dollar overall, switching biases and everything else. But with this sort of dollar weakness, right, it has gold going crazy. So as you guys know, I did have, of course, two plans, one for GJ, one for gold. Was pretty much looking for shorts. Looking for shorts on not only GJ but gold as well. So of course, this dollar weakness definitely kind of muddied up those plans. I did get some really good shorts early in the week that I'll cover. But we can kind of move on from the dollar. Just wanted to put that out there. And of course, I'm going to start with the indexes for this coming week. We can go into JPY basket. Nothing much has really changed. We're still moving within this sort of range. Nothing crazy either going on with the Bank of Japan. Overall, my sentiment is still the same, right? Like we're still, still making lower highs, lower lows, and everything else. We're still forming wicks to the upside, pushing downward. Especially, of course, the end of October with the Bank of Japan's monetary policy statement. They enjoy a weak yen, so I'm just gonna take that and run with it for the most part. And of course, as far as price action is concerned, I mean, it reflects that, right? Like, price action reflects those statements anyways, because we see clear weakness in the yen. Not only from daily perspective, weekly and monthly perspective as well. So I would just, again, I'm just going to be watching this sort of range, how it plays out, watch for breaks to the downside, and then retest of this previous range low as well. But with that said, I still would expect yen weakness. We also have this sort of channel right here, sort of a descending triangle as well. So even with that in mind, I would still expect yen weakness coming into the future weeks and months. Moving on to the British pound, pretty much same thing here as well. I did cover last week. We were moving into this sort of channel high and sort of a level of structure up here. I wanted to see if we'd potentially roll over or break that, especially with the official bank rates coming out of the UK this last week. I believe they did a 75 basis point hike as well. I did mention every time the pound gets a rate hike, it does end up weakening. We saw that exactly, we saw exactly that here as well. Ended up weakening to the downside, broke back below this sort of level of structure, and moving into this this channel mid and potentially this channel low. So nothing much has really changed for the pound as far as my sentiment's concerned. Still pretty much in the in the same boat. I'm still waiting for a reclaim of this weekly level to sort of switch any bias and look for more pound strength. We are pushing into it, but we just haven't closed. We haven't closed above this particular area. If anything, we're sort of forming a rounded top here, right? And potentially moving lower for the coming weeks. We can look at the monthly as well. Same sort of deal. What I was looking for prior is still what I'm looking for now. A push into the 119, 120 region before a knockback or a break straight through above 121, a retest, and a move higher along with that channel break on the monthly. So I'm just going to be watching that here. Of course, I would love GBP strength, especially with me wanting to get long on GJ. Of course, we have that yen weakness there as well. So definitely something to look at and consider as far as watching out for pound strength. So that's kind of my sentiment. Nothing much has changed on the pound or the yen. Really wanted to cover the dollar overall. We can go ahead and move on into what we'll be trading this week. So I want to start with GJ. Excuse me. So we'll go ahead and pull this up here. So as you guys can see, right, we did not this last week, but the week prior, we did get a close with strength above that weekly range high. Exactly what I was looking for to get long. We had a pretty deep pullback. Of course, it looks crazy on shorter time frames. When you look at it on higher time frames, let me move this out of the way. Okay. But when you look at it on higher time frames, this is really just a retest of that weekly structure, right? We got a perfect break and then now a retest with a wick to the downside inside of this sort of weekly previous resistance / like liquidity zone and all these different things. So the next kind of steps would be looking for longs from this area. Obviously if we get another sort of lower wick into this area, I want to get into longs in those in those different levels. I do have one position that I'm holding over the weekend on GJ. I believe it's around like 165 800 area, and I'll cover it. I have the tool laid out on lower time frames as well. So I did want to, of course there were great shorting opportunities, but overall, especially when we look at the higher time frame sort of bias or sort of trend, I didn't want to counter trend trade in that respect. So of course I could have taken, I saw so many shorts, you know what I mean? I saw plenty of shorting opportunities, and maybe that ideology might be a little bit flawed, but I didn't want to knowingly short with with us being in a bullish sort of trend on a higher time frames and like from a long-term standpoint and everything else. So I did just kind of want to let price bottom out and then finally reverse to the upside, because I know that there's a lot of upside potential, especially with high time frame price action and confluence with that. So that, again, just to kind of conclude the weekly sort of time frame, we did push into that weekly range high, broke it. This last weekly candle that we're looking at here, potential retest. I wouldn't really consider anything outside of that unless we, solid body break back into this sort of range. But as it stands, it looks like we're just getting a very clean retest of that weekly structure before a move higher into 175. Looking at it on the daily, we are at sort of a bouncer break level. This is a pretty important SR level here as well. As you guys can see, every time we move into this level previously, we would get knocked back, move back in, knocked back, move back in, touch that June high, knock back, and so on. So now that we have switched sort of from a structural standpoint, turning it from resistance now into support, I would expect us to either bounce or break from this level. So this is an important daily level that I'll be looking at for this coming week. Of course, I would love some lower wick creation to the downside before a move up back above this weekly range high. So that's kind of what I'll be looking at. If I wanted to put some arrows here just to make it a bit clearer, I could, I would expect something along the lines of this. We could get a push into the June high, a knockback to the bouncer break level, and then a move higher into the 170 area. Or, even better, we could get a break back into the June high, a retest on top of that, and then a move higher. Inversely, of course, we could see a straight breakdown into this daily range mid, this previous daily range mid, potentially a retest of that bouncer break area before move lower. But that's the only sort of play to the downside that I would even consider, especially, of course, us sitting on top of this level as support at the moment. So of course I'm biased towards buys, and that's kind of what my trading will reflect going into these coming weeks or these coming days. So I just want to make that clear. Going into the 4 hour, same sort of deal, and this is my position I'm currently in as well. I'm up about like 1%, like 100 pips, 89 pips, whatever it is. And again, I was waiting literally the entire week for price to bottom out. We had sort of this head and shoulder structure that ended up breaking this 4 hour channel to the downside, broke straight through the June high. I did mention in my previous pre-market plan that we could get a pretty deep retest. We could either retest right on top of the June high or into the 167,800 area. We got an even deeper retest into the 16600 area. And this is a fair level of structure. We have, if we look left, we have a ton of respect on this particular structure, this level, right? We have, it acting as resistance here. Resistance, a deviation, then back into resistance. Finally turning it into support for a third time. So you can kind of consider this as, or personally, I'm considering this as, potential triple bottom. So of course, that June high being the neckline, I would like to see a break back above that, retest, and move higher. But I did get positions. I did get positioned pretty early, especially considering looking left, all the times we've respected this structure not only as support but resistance in the past as well. So I placed my stop right below these wicks here. I have a couple different targets. My first target would be that 167,800 area into the June high, target 2, and then target 3 at the October 22 high, 172, 120. So that's kind of my outlook from a 4 hour perspective. Of course, especially with this being a bouncer break level on higher time frames, of course we could break below this structure and move into 164. If we do make a clean break back into that 164 range below that, I would then be playing it level to level and looking for shorts thereafter. Of course, there are plenty of places we can find stability at and potentially move back up from. But just overall, looking at everything from a higher time frame perspective, especially on the daily and everything else, I would expect to move at least into that daily range mid. So I would be shorting it from 164 into that daily range mid around 162 area. So that's kind of where I'm at. Of course, I would love to see the weekly open look something like this. Of course, we already have some upside momentum. Move into this June high, retest, and move higher. Or, outside of that, we can kind of range within these levels here as well. We can see something along the lines of this, before I move into that June high and I move higher from there. And then, of course, that one downside sort of play could be that move into 164, retest, and then move lower as well. Just want to make this clear for my future self. I am biased towards buys, especially with the weekly the weekly market structure and the base we're forming on that previous level of resistance on the daily, turning that into support now, as well as on the 4-hour here as well. We can see pretty clearly, and then we have this triple top. I can also throw like a fib on it type of thing. I just want to make it be as thorough as possible. I could also throw a fib on it. That target 1 is in confluence with that 382. No real level of structure at the 618. We could take these widths into consideration here as well, to add in confluence with the 618. But it's just something that I'll be watching in the coming weeks and overall while I'm looking to take profit on this particular position. So that's kind of where I'm at on the 4-hour. We could look at the 1-hour as well, much cleaner. We could also look at it from the perspective of, we're in this sort of downtrending channel at the moment, and we just finished building the base last week. Another sort of triple bottom on the 1-hour, broke above that neckline, and now we're building momentum and pushing up into the September 22 high. So again, it's in confluence with all of my different targets. We have target 1 here, target 2 at the June high, and then target 3 at 172, 120. Excuse me. So again, at most, I wouldn't expect like a break of 165 area. Outside of a retest of this particular structure, we have a very strong SR level, multiple weekly candle closes, highs and lows at this particular level here as well. So as far as my system's concerned, my strategy, this would now be a pretty strong level of structure to be respected and bounce from, which also just adds conviction, at least for myself, for longs. So of course, this channel break would be extremely bullish. We also have a ton of momentum building up here, as I mentioned. Would love to see it move into that September 22 high. Going to wait to see what the reaction is to that September 22 high. See if we get knocked back. Maybe I take partials here, or we break straight into it, into the June high and retest and everything else, as I mentioned before. But this is sort of a bouncer break level at the September 22 high. So I hope that makes sense, especially just going into the price action sort of last week. I did have these levels spelled out here. This particular level was a bouncer break level for me. We did not bounce from it. We ended up actually breaking it, which would have been a beautiful short, right? Like if I would have gotten in on this retest here, this would have been at least 500 pip move. That's nuts. But again, I was pretty strong in my bias, so I had the blinders on in that respect. Do I regret it? I mean, it is what it is, right? I'd rather follow my plan than create bad habits, but this could have potentially been a really good short, and especially with my strategy of taking things level to level, I shouldn't have let my bias blind me too much in that respect, because again, it's a very clean break, right? Like we have this push, another break of structure, recess of structure, and then just a clean break straight down before sort of reaccumulating and then now moving up. So with that in mind, of course, like I said, I would love to see us break back above the September 22 high. Excuse me. This would be sort of a break of the overall trend and market structure on the 1-hour. So that's what I would be looking for, especially since I already have a position on this pair into the coming week. So that is my analysis on GJ. I hope that makes sense. Future me. We can go ahead and look at gold here as well. Gold has been looking really good, especially with that dollar weakness I just mentioned a little while earlier. You guys can see on the weekly, we've had multiple tests of this particular level here. I believe that, what is this, 1616, like the 1617 area. Multiple weekly lows here, long way to the downside into this zone, which is enough for me to say, hey, we're building a base here. We're even potentially breaking this downtrending channel and breaking back into this weekly level at 1680. Excuse me. This is in confluence with the 382 and the daily 618. So this is a pretty strong level, but with this sort of momentum on the weekly candle, this sort of strength, this close with strength, I wouldn't put it out of the question, or out of the, I wouldn't not take it into consideration that we could potentially be reversing. So it's something that I am looking at. It becomes a lot clearer on lower time frames as well. But when you look at it from a weekly perspective, as you guys can see, again, we're building a base here at this level. We've, had multiple rejections to the downside at this point, and we're now closing with strength almost above that weekly level. Looking at it from the daily, we have this particular candle here as well on the daily, close with a ton of strength, and we can see as here as well here, we look back, every other candle that's closed with strength within this region has broken above and at least down to 1725. So it's definitely something I'm going to be considering, especially if we close with we close with strength above this liquidity zone, this weekly level, and then this channel here as well, this trend line break. For reversals into 1725. So definitely something to take into consideration as far as buys are concerned, especially when we look at the dollar and the short-term weakness that we're seeing as well. Looking at the 4-hour, I've had this bubble here for a while. A clean break back into the weekly range equals a potential reversal to 1725. And what do we have here? A very clean break. We had a ton of momentum, as you guys can see right here. Let me move this. A very clean break with momentum from the 1614 area into 1678 and above that. So we have officially solid bodied with, I would say with relative strength above that weekly level. So definitely something to take into consideration. We could potentially, have a break and retest sort of play out here. We break into the 1680 area and we break back down to 1658 to retest this level of structure before we move higher. If we break below that, right, if we break back below 1659 and into that range below, I would then be wanting to short it level to level. But if we can maintain our head above this sort of water at 1680, I would want to be getting long and playing it level to level, as these arrows show here as well, because these are all clean levels of structure. There's a previous range here. Previous SR level here as well at 1694, and I would be wanting to short a retest of 1680 if it presents itself. Or excuse me, I would be wanting to long a retest of 1680 if it presents itself. Excuse me. As far as last week's positions are concerned, I did get in a little early at in this particular region. I typically don't trade on Sundays, but for whatever reason, I noticed that this was looking good to the downside. I believe this is at 1645. So I did take these shorts at 1645 right up here into, until it reversed about 114 pips into 1631. I placed my stops at break even at that point. I should have taken partials and it ended up reversing back on me. I did have a bubble here as well that basically alerted me to short any retest of this level. We did get a pretty big retest because of the news and then a break lower. I did not catch it though, so this was my only worthwhile position that ended up being a break even position on gold. So just want to make that clear, get that covered there as well. But then just to recap, we have solid bodied above this 1680 weekly level. I would love to see a retest of 1660, 1659 area before we move up. But if we can maintain our head above water, the 1680 weekly level, then we could potentially see price retest that 1680 level and then continue to move higher. In the event that we break below 1659 back into this range, I would then be wanting to short it level to level back into 1614, where we have a very strong level of support there. Hope that makes sense. Going into the 1 hour, we do have multiple levels of respected structure here as well. As you guys can see, we have broken above that weekly level here on the 1 hour as well with strength, and we're sort of consolidating above here, right? We could see again a retest into the 1675 area or lower than that, as mentioned on the 4 hour. Really what I'm wanting to see is price maintain its sort of head above water, above this level, to continue longing it into the next sort of levels of resistance. If we break back below into these ranges, I would then be wanting to short it level to level. So that's kind of my outlook on gold. Hope this made sense. We're kind of in, especially since we've been in this range for so long inside of 1678, we are sort of now in price discovery as well. So we could see a lot of volatile price actions to the upside. Since we're looking left, right? Not a lot of price action has been taking place up here for these past couple weeks. So definitely something it's pretty big, something to take into consideration. As far as wanting to take longs, but if we do break back into this range, have sort of a mean reversion into 1659, I'd want to short it into that, potentially short it into that level, and wait for that retest before getting long. Or if we get a much shallower retest, I would get long around 1675. I hope this makes sense though. That's my overall pre-market plan for this coming week on gold and GJ. I did go ahead and cover those indices there as well. So future me, God bless you, bro. I hope you're having a great day. I love you, man.
I hope you're fulfilling all of your goals, moving towards your passions and what you truly want out of life and everything else. And God bless you, man. Take care.